Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills, continuing on with part 3 of our Rifts Asia guide. Now, the one further delves into the materials of Rifts China 1 and 2 from the Rifts World Book series. One might begin to realize that perhaps China's reputation is maybe a little bit overblown, at least in the Rift setting. Insofar that, you get past that initial line of Yama kingdoms that hug the coastline of China's south, you get into a region, a mountainous region, where no Yama kings hold sway at all. These can generally be referred to as the Dragonlands. To their extreme west of this little wedge of land bordering Tibet, it is labeled as Free Yunnan. Unfortunately, this is one of the few things that is kind of like, mentioned occasionally in the world books and is obviously labeled on the map, but there's very little in the way of actual details as to exactly what Free Yunnan is. You can assume, obviously, that it's a human-dominated region that is free, and beyond that, it's kind of subject to interpretation of exactly what you want to do with it. Generally, it's kind of part of a larger band of land that you can refer to as the Dragonlands. This is a region mostly mountainous, where you have your individual little rural human settlements and walled villages and such. But instead of being ruled over by Yama kings, they'll typically have a powerful martial arts school or a dragon or some other benevolent supernatural being that serves as its protector. To keep the demons at bay. Also, in this region, just north of the province of Guangzhou to the south and to Chiangxi to the north of it, hidden in the mountains, you can find the underground archaeology of the Geofront. The Geofront is all that is left of the original Chinese Communist government from before the rifts. Geofront was one of those many of the late 21st century's, kind of techno-impressive country boasting rights kind of projects. Look at us, we're going to build a gigantic underground city that's fed off, geothermal power and all that kind of stuff. Just mostly to show off to other nations and show that, like, hey, we got the high-tech, interesting, innovative stuff too. Except after the rifts come, for, various reasons between, like the disasters falling upon the cities along the coastlines and demon armies popping out of a rift in the middle of the Chiangxi, the Geofront found itself having to close itself off to the surface to be able to survive. And after several centuries, they're kind of slowly and tepidly starting to reemerge to the surface. Though they, have a lot of potential military might because, they still have a lot of pre-rift technology in terms of, like robot power armors, weapons, armor, vehicles, all that kind of stuff. They've become, maybe a little agoraphobic as a society. And so they mostly stage scouting raids and they make alliances with the surface dwelling humans of the Dragonlands and Free Yunnan, support them technologically and stuff. But they have yet to really reveal and unleash their full military muscle on anything. But you can say that they are probably a contributing factor as to why you have this little stretch of land from Tibet over to the east and the inland borders of the Fujian province that's has managed to remain free of direct demon control. Beyond this region is another stretch of Yama kingdoms that punches from the inner borders of Zhejiang to the east and then basically goes straight west. There's 3 of them. Hubei is probably the one that's in the best functional shape. Is controlled by a demon regent who is a demon underling who got his own mandate from heaven to take over and has basically, been recruiting all sorts of expatriate demons who are tired of their Yama kings or come from kingdoms where the Yama king has fallen. They obviously have absorbed quite a few from Xishang and Sichuan and Zhejiang and probably the Henan province, have all come in to join Hubei. It's another one of the better Yama kings to have as like a villainous character in the background because he's got long-term plans. especially since he's not yet a Yama King. He's also maybe a bit more approachable as something that player characters might actually be able to do something about. To the west of Hubei is Chiangxi. This is the province that's just directly north of where the geofront is located. Its Yama King has completely lost his mind, and so most of his demon underlings have just kind of given up on doing their jobs. The border defenses are nearly non-existent. Either a lot of the demons there have gone to other kingdoms where, they actually, have jobs to do, or they're just kind of just doing their own thing unsupervised. And to its left, the westernmost of all the Yama kingdoms is Sichuan, whose Yama King is gone. It's not clear whether or not they were killed or they've just gone AWOL and missing, but it's basically just become like a pure demonic anarchy in the Sichuan province. It's also one of the larger provinces to be had, though, and is likely like one of the major zones that threaten places like Free Yunnan and the geofront, since the demons there have like no controls on them in terms of like how they operate. They can just do what they want, and because they don't have a Yama kingdom, there's no influx of fresh souls. The dead don't re-rise there or anything like that. So, in order for them to continue to have food and playthings and subjects to rule over, the demons of that region have the most incentive to try to strike into human-controlled areas like Free Yunnan and the Dragonlands to try to take slaves and captives back to their region. From this point out, the Yama kingdoms, are not an effective, cohesive civilization of sorts. They're very bound to Confucianist, afterlife mandates. They have their rules and their laws. There's a lot of interaction with groups like the often mentioned but not described Taoist immortals, who they will frequently, come to agreements that, we'll roll over our little hell on earth in this region, but those sacred mountains over there, they're all yours, buddy. They can actually be surprisingly respectful of the dragons that are also found in the setting. Also, like the Taoist immortals, there's no specific Chinese lineages of dragons described in either of the world books for China, so one must assume that you'd have to pull Asian-style dragons out of the Rift's Japan book and just basically transplant them and use them there as desired. Also, ironically, throughout all of these source books for Rifts, despite the fact that they've been so frequently overused throughout the years and other Rifts settings, there's a distinct lack of Chiangxi dragons, which is, like I said, just kind of an interesting side note. But, the Dragonlands and Free Yunnan, Geofront, they're one of your obvious hubs for heroic characters to either come from, or this is the region that they're trying to defend and keep safe from the demon hordes around them. Since they're so surrounded by a variety of different kingdoms, it gives you a lot of different avenues to take player characters and have them experience different kinds of Yama King societies and such, without getting too much into the dark heart of the empire that's a little bit further north, which will be the subject of our next video. I don't know, I wish I could go into a bit more detail about these things, but unfortunately the Rifts China books, as much as they're full of information, there's also just large swaths of things that, as I mentioned, the Taoist immortals, regional dragons, what the hell Free Yunnan is, that, just doesn't really get any material to really flesh them out. And that's a pro and a con. Obviously, if you're looking for a real canonical presentation of Rifts, it doesn't really give you much to go on. But if you want to have a more personalized interpretation of and create your own kind of subsetting, how you want to have, a main village for the player characters to operate out of, and who you want to have be the benefactor that oversees it and keeps it safe from the demon hordes outside. That's on you to come up with it. So to that end, it's okay. The Geofront, I do not think is a very particularly compelling subsetting in and of itself for adventuring. You know, it should probably be left as like a mystery, and it's something that, you know, occasionally characters might run into Geofront NPCs and eventually, you know, maybe tease out how to find Geofront and eventually go and see Geofront. But characters from Geofront don't necessarily strike me as quite as compelling or as useful as your more mainstream Chinese heroic characters, but that's just a personal opinion. I will, I guess, also as a note, similar to the Sovietsky and the Rifts Russia setting, there is this kind of odd thing that, in spite of how often Rifts has been accused of being pro-fascist over the many years it's been out because of stuff like having the coalition states in North America or Triax and the NGR, the only of the like remnant human, you know, pre-Rifts techno civilizations that ever really get treated as if, you know, they're even remotely nice and accepting of non-humans and the presence of magic and that kind of stuff tend to be the ones that used to be communist. So I don't know if that's pro-fascist. They're not doing a good job of it, let's say. So I guess that's about it. Like I said, the next video we'll be talking about the dark heart of the old Chinese Empire. And until next time, stay waspinated.